Hi, Angie.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Swati.
I'm very excited to do this segment with you on vibe coding. So, for everyone's reference, Angie and I both come from extensive background in product strategy. We have both ideated and shipped products to market. Of course, Angie has a very deep experience in the healthcare space, and I have covered multiple different industries. We recently connected and found that we have a shared passion for AI, and we're both exploring a lot of different tools in our ideation journey, and especially using AI as our thought partner and to really visualize our ideas. So, welcome, Angie. Why don't you tell us what has been your journey with AI and what are some of the ways in which you're using AI in your day to day?
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to share my experience with you. I actually was looking mostly at AI on how does it support clinical healthcare and things like that. And I think a ton of activity in that space. But I also have been working on a startup that's outside of healthcare. It's actually in politics. And I went to a session at Boulder Startup during Boulder Startup Week where they did a demo of Replit. And I was like, okay, I can actually show more of what I'm trying to articulate by using this tool and creating a basic prototype for people to see. Now, as I got into it, I started realizing I could actually build with this. And so it has been quite the journey, and I've learned a lot along the way. So I'm excited to share that with you.
Well, that's wonderful. So, Angie, why don't we do this? Show us
Yeah,
what you're building. I have lots of questions for you, of course. As you know, I have been playing with different tools as well. I have spent some time in Replit, but I'm more of a lovable girl. Maybe I'll call it that. But
totally
I'd love
fair.
to see what you've built and, of course, walk us through your process as well.
Right. So as I mentioned, I was originally looking at how does AI support existing workflows or gather data or impact the user experience from a usability perspective, not from how do I build the software. So once I heard about Replit, I actually went out and I reviewed Cursor and I did two side-by-side comparisons to see which one was most effective for me. So my background is really more, like you said, product management. I'm not an engineer. So it's the balance with Replit was perfect for my skill set. So I started building because I really like to just learn by doing. And I'm going to start with what I was building from a legislator's perspective. So in politics, there's all these bills out there, and this is state level politics. And it gets really complicated. And we need to use the data in a way that makes sense to the end user. So I really just started playing around with how do I bring all this information into a system and make it visually appealing and maybe use some AI to give people bite-sized summaries of information. So what you're seeing here is real bills from Colorado from 2025. You see on the left-hand side, that's the agent that I would be chatting with that kind of I guide it, and sometimes it guides me on how to build things. And this data is all brought in through scrapers that I built using Replit. And it embeds other components that it needs to actually complete the function. But you can see this is relatively complex data. The AI summary is actually from OpenAI integration that I did as well. And I'm able to do like supporting positions, opposing positions. And then I even have all the voting record information. So all of this data starts to feed the pipeline of what the end user experience is ultimately going to be is how do voters use this to inform them during the election cycle and also during the legislative cycle.
Angie, I want to go back with some of the components you were touching on. So, you
Mhm.
said that you are scraping this data live,
Yeah.
right? So, when you
Yes.
said you built the scraper, do you mean that you wrote the code for it, or are you using an existing API within
So
Replit to scrape data from a web page?
yeah, that's a great question. So I actually kind of asked Replit, what are my options for getting
Mm.
data from this website? So I gave it the target website, which is the state of Colorado legislative website. And it gave me a couple options. And honestly, we went through probably 3 or 4 iterations of using
Mm.
Playwright and Puppeteer and, adding these components until we were able to get it where we needed it to be. Now, the other thing you have to do when you work with Replit is you have to be very prescriptive in what you want it to do with the data. So in this case, I said it needs to be persistent. I need you to create a database for me. So you can see here that it actually creates the database for you. This is a Postgres database. You have all the bills out here and all the associated data with it. If you don't do that, then it puts it in memory and you come back, the server's restarted and everything's gone. So you have to be very specific and work with it, but it took several iterations to get this data in and formatted in a way that's usable.
This is the same experience I have with Lovable, where if you don't point it to a database, it's going to keep it in the session memory, which means it goes away. So is this database local to Replit, or are you pointing it to an external database?
I use the out-of-the-box database system that comes with Replit, which is Postgres, but you can use SQL. You can connect it to a local database. That part's actually not that hard. I just used the out-of-the-box because that was really the easy button.
That's interesting. Now, I know that Replit also connects with Supabase, which is what Lovable uses as well, but that means you have to create an account. That's yet another tool. To me, it just feels an extra step that's unnecessary when you're in prototyping phase. One of the other things you mentioned was that you have built an agent, and this agent is using OpenAI API to process the data and generate these summaries. One thing to note, which I don't know if that's the case with Replit, but at least in my experience working with Lovable, if I don't encrypt the key explicitly, I'm at risk of my key being visible.
Okay. It is encrypted in Replit. I haven't deployed this to production yet, but that is something that I would want to make sure I verify. Agreed. Yeah.
So as you're thinking about data persistence and storing this data, did you actually sit and design the database schema? I guess I'm just curious what your process was.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that has also been very much a learning experience. When you first start asking for a certain feature, which is normally how product people think, I want it to be able to do this. I want it to be able to display the bills. It will create its own data structure to manage that. So for a long time at the beginning, I was letting it just do whatever it wanted to do. But you have to keep in mind, this AI doesn't know your full vision. So I did step back and create my destination database schema of what I would like it to look like in the end. And you can import that. It's the same with like the design system. You have to make sure that you're very clear on this is what the design looks like. Otherwise, you'll create a new page. The buttons will look totally different. It won't do tabs. It'll do something else.
That makes sense. Now, tell me about when you're thinking about the design, the UI and the UX of this. Of course, user experience is always important, but functionality comes first. When you work with Replit, how are you prompting it, or are you using any special tools to prompt so that it actually gets the shell right?
I'm actually using ChatGPT. So I went out, no, I did. I went out to ChatGPT and basically said, okay, if I'm building a web app from scratch, what are all the components I would need to define to have a really good design style guide that creates a CSS file and all of that? Now, ChatGPT can actually write the Tailwind CSS for you or any of the code for you, and you can move it into Replit, or you can create a requirements document and put that into Replit. And I've done it both ways, but I use ChatGPT because ChatGPT will ask you, well, what about this? What if the button's active? What color do you want it to be?
One of the things I found useful was screenshots. So I would take screenshots in addition to refining the prompts, but I started to take screenshots, both for the purposes of giving an idea of what kind of design or navigation I was interested in, but then also using screenshots for troubleshooting.
Yeah, I have heard Lovable actually does it really well. I have tried it with Replit with what I would call very mixed results. So when it's troubleshooting its own thing and I'm showing it an error or I'm showing it a layout problem, it will understand that and fix it. If I bring something in from the outside, it wouldn't even bring in the colors.
I spent the entire weekend building the same prototype in both systems side by side. I just found myself leaning more towards Lovable for all subsequent prototypes, generally because I found Lovable's inference layer was what's much stronger. It wasn't over-engineering anything. It did exactly what I asked it to do, which was good because then I wasn't backpedaling what I didn't want. Also, I found that its design libraries are very rich. All right. Anything additional you'd like to share?
Yeah, I definitely love it. I mean, I think it's been able to expedite delivery. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work when I try to take this system to production, although now that I'm being very deliberate in how I'm building out the actual application, I feel a lot more confident than I did off kind of the piecemeal prototyping I did. But I also recognize that there could be some scalability issues or things that I haven't really identified. The other key thing, though, that I found is that the budget that I started with when I originally came up with this concept for the Capital Commons solution with my partner, it was about $1 million in development effort. And that's using traditional offshore UI UX designers, front end engineers, back end engineers, a DBA, the traditional stack of different expertise that you need to build something. And honestly, I would say my budget right now is around 50 grand to take it all the way to
That's
prod.
mind blowing. I'm sure aside from the budget, you'd appreciate this since both of us have worked in different environments and collaborated with cross-functional teams. I love that I have the tools in my hand now to bring my idea to screen
Yes.
and do more show and tell instead
Yeah.
of talk through text. So I feel that it has not only expedited the process, not only reduced the cost, but it really allows anyone and everyone, regardless of the background, to bring their ideas to life, which is what's most remarkable about these tools, in my opinion.
For sure. It has been very empowering. Like, if you asked me a year ago if I could do this, I would have said, no way. I don't have the right background to do all that. I'm not a DBA and a UX designer and a front end developer.
Right.
Well, you know what? Now I don't have to be.
Angie, let's summarize, right? At least what stood out for me was that as you're building, even within these prototyping environments, you're looking at having different playgrounds, some where you are
Yes.
kind of playing around with your concept, and then one where it's more concrete and you have more specific prompts, then use that towards a more final version of the prototype so you can continue to build more effectively in an incremental manner. Obviously, while good 60 to 70 or 80% of the heavy lifting can be done without a big team, when you are looking to productionalize the solution, you are definitely looking to involve the right subject matter experts who can take it to production, who can actually support this, troubleshoot this if anything goes wrong, and people who have the right engineering mindset to launch and support production grade
Yeah,
environments. So
absolutely.
that makes sense. All right. Well, this was very enlightening. Thank you for sharing your Replit experience. I definitely learned quite a few things. And thanks again for your time today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.